So I don't know about you, but that is something I would never be able to put in between my toes. Hello and welcome to You Started It with Daniel Fernandes. On today's episode, I have international guests. I have Carl Ncube from Zimbabwe. I have Kaneez Surka from South Bombay.
Yeah.
Yay!
Welcome to the podcast, guys. Carl, we met a couple of days ago, and when I first met you, you told me the name is not pronounced Ncube.
There's a proper
there's a
way
proper
of doing it.
pronunciation, which I have actually finally mastered. So it's Carl Ncube.
Exactly.
Whoa!
Exactly. This is the first.
Too good.
For me in
First
India,
time.
actually, because everyone's been saying different things like
Yeah, because
Nubri,
a lot of
Nubli.
Nubli. Or you should see
Naidu.
what happens to Indian names. Like even me, like I've heard people call me Denial.
That's right.
So dear Denial, we would.
Listen, your mom, she loves you, okay? You
So-
exist.
Yeah, but in a lot of African languages, you have a lot of clicking sounds.
Well, in the south, we've got
lot
a couple of languages where you click. So you've got like Zulu. There's a couple of clicks in
Yeah,
there.
Xhosa.
Xhosa. They already.
Xhosa.
Yeah.
Xhosa.
There's a language in I think it's like Namibia as well, where they do a lot of
Yeah,
clicking.
the San
and then,
people.
yeah,
It's
and then
just
you've
clicks.
Heard,
Okay.
it's just clicks.
So-
Exclamation marks.
Yeah.
In fact, double exclamation
Yeah.
marks. I went to a festival called Kaikams Festival.
Oh, that sounds
which is,
great.
Which is spelled like with an AE. Backspace, which is
Whoa.
weird. I'm like,
How is the backspace pronounced?
Comes. I think it's like Kai, which
Have
is
you
different to
seen The
Kams.
Gods Must Be Crazy?
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
that,
yeah.
those are quite
Yeah, which makes it weird because how do you say like a URL if it's your website? Like
Yeah.
HTTP colon www. Like I don't know. Weird.
And for those of you who are wondering how Kaneez has such great knowledge about African countries,
Yes.
that's because Kaneez is actually from South Africa
I am.
and not India. And for the longest time, I was under the impression that you, Kaneez, have a South African accent.
Yeah,
And I just got to know that this isn't a South African
because
accent.
he walked into the room and Carl was like, she's from South Africa. And Carl's like, what? She's like, didn't you hear from the accent? And everyone's like,
no.
that's not a South African accent.
I don't even recognize that accent.
It's when I go to South Africa, people over here, everyone's like, oh, you have what's that accent? And then I go to South Africa and they're like, what's that Indian accent? I'm like, I just don't belong anywhere anymore. Like,
See,
Unless when she goes back to Africa, every time she probably sounds like, Ek weet nie, op die underkant, alleen die beste. No, just
that's Afrikaans.
random.
that's African. All right.
Said
cool.
badly. That didn't
Yeah,
even make sense.
yeah, exactly. If any Afrikaners are watching
Afrikaners
this.
watching is like, what did that?
What did he say?
Not sure.
I don't know if I have any subscribers from any African. South Africa for sure. Yeah, I have.
I've subscribed to your channel.
You subscribe to my channel. I have one South African. So you have a South African passport.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I love India.
I don't know. I mean, if you really
No,
love,
I just-
I'm just saying, Kaneez, if you really loved India, you would give up South
But I have
African
an
citizenship.
OCI. I have a dual citizenship.
Yeah, OCI
What's
is
an
very.
OCI?
So
It's like-
Is it like OCD?
Overs-
So it's not.
overseas citizenship. So what is it?
Of
What?
India, yeah.
Overseas citizenship of India. So
Ooh,
basically,
I like
if you're
that.
an
It's
Indian national who lives in another country and has another citizenship of another country, you still get like a card called
Yeah,
the OCI.
like
Wow.
a lifetime
Like,
like
you need-
visa almost.
Yeah.
Wow, we have a similar thing in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
We call it exile, but it's
Yeah.
very, not
very-
as cool.
it's
They
very
don't give
similar.
you a card.
They
They,
don't
anything.
give you a
They don't allow you to carry the flag. That's actually illegal, by the way. You can't carry our flag.
If
You
you,
can't
are
carry-
No,
exiled,
you're not allowed to carry the Zimbabwean flag.
anybody.
To use it like in a patriotic manner.
Oh, it's same here.
You can't.
Oh, you
can't.
can- India,
You
you
can't.
can. I mean-
you can't like.
India. I
like,
mean, you go to a
depends
cricket match in
where.
India, you can carry the
Fair.
Indian flag.
But like in the Coldplay concert, some people lost their shit.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
when what's his name? Chris came
Oh,
on
because
too.
he had the Indian flag, wrapped around his.
Oh, like
waist or
that.
something.
my
I
bad.
see.
Yeah, people are a little touchy about, so
How
if you're
it's-
using,
No,
and there are
absolutely.
laws about this. So if you're
Yeah.
using the Indian flag on any particular public display, there's a certain manner in which
Okay.
you must.
Which explains why that's happened in Zimbabwe, because it was used for citizens like movement against the
Right.
government. So
Ah.
I suppose,
Oh, that's so interesting.
And you've been doing comedy for how long now, Carl?
Well, I started comedy in 2010. But my dad was a comedian.
What?
So I'm a second generation comic.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
He's
so,
second.
Never
so
met
I
any-
grew up around comedy. He would perform at weddings but never his own shows.
Okay.
And so when he found out that I was a comic,
Yeah.
he found it surprising that people actually came just to watch me. There wasn't anyone getting married or there was no one getting buried. You know, it's just
Do you
like
have comedy at funerals? Or?
no. But we do have people that have become. There's a guy called Lamek in Zimbabwe who's become famous.
Yeah.
For like ranting at a funeral. I don't know
What?
if we'd call
Like
it
a comedic
comedy.
rant?
Well, he became like a huge star for about 15 minutes. But like he went viral
No, I think,
and everything.
I don't know.
and,
I think the concept of a comedy show at a funeral would
It's
be
a great
interesting.
idea.
after
It's appropriate,
It's
right?
appropriate. I think
appropriate.
after all the rituals are done, the audience is, you have an audience already,
Yeah.
so they're just
Exactly.
sitting there. You might
Yeah.
as well just throw in a mic and.
I think if it's done tastefully, like it's actually
Yeah.
it'll be
Yeah, if
really
you
nice.
can-
for the
Exactly.
people
I
who are
mean, I
there.
can totally imagine.
Whoa.
I can totally imagine comedians getting up on stage and like, okay, I know you've had a bad day.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I know
But
the
think it
mood
would
in
really
here is a
suck
little.
if the comic actually dies.
Yeah, at a comedy
like
show.
that's just bad. That's
Tough
just
crowd.
bad on too many
That's
levels.
why I would love to die on stage.
On stage,
like
at a
what, like in
funeral.
the middle
You
of an
die on stage, right?
like in the middle of an improv.
Oh, you
scene.
mean literally die?
Yeah, that'd be a great way to go out, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
about
And
it.
I know it'll obviously take a while for the audience to get it.
Is it a
you're
real
wondering, what
death?
is that?
Is
That's
that-
some A-level method acting.
I know, right?
She's into her character. Like, guys, it's 6 a.m. I think
Man.
Some alternative
is anyone
theatre.
going to check on her?
But I'll be going out doing what I love. I think I'm not being funny. I think
Yeah,
it's a
yeah, I
beautiful
think that's
way.
a-
But then,
No, that's a beautiful
But after
way
you
to-
die, do
yeah.
you want the other improvisers to go and scene?
That's exactly what I want. I want my life to be and scene, and then Kaneez died. It's beautiful. It's very poetic.
Yeah, just make sure the camera is rolling. 100% 2 million views. we
Yeah,
need over
my
there.
first
Your first
viral
2
video.
million. Your first viral videos. So what happens here in India is once you reach a certain level of your comedy, you get online. So you put out your work online. So a lot of comedians have YouTube videos and stuff like that. So once it gets to any of those YouTube videos do well, you get popular, and that translates to
Your live shows.
your live shows.
Right,
People
right.
come and buy tickets. So it's literally YouTube is doing for the Indian comedy scene what Comedy Central did for American comedians in the 70s and the 80s.
And I can totally imagine. I think like right now, especially like in India, when it comes to tech and it comes to like the use of internet penetration and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty remarkable. And the numbers, obviously.
There are Indians everywhere. I mean, all over the world. So,
Yeah.
so you actually, so if a comedian thinks about in terms of how he wants to map his market, you have the Indian audience in India, you have the Indian audience abroad,
Oh, yeah.
which is again a huge market.
The whole NRI
every,
market.
Yeah, it's called the NRI market. So every major international city in the world has a very strong Indian population. So you can actually go to Melbourne or New York or London and do shows for Indians.
Yeah.
Only, yeah.
And do your exact same set here that you
Right.
and you can do that over there, and at the same time you can play to a completely international audience at another comedy club the same night.
Like my friends were performing in New York, and it was like sold out shows, and the comedy producer, like the comedy club owners, was just like, "How did you guys you aren't even from here? How did you manage to
that's-
sell out
that's
these shows?"
exactly, and it's
That's
the
with all
same-
the Indians.
Because Indians are everywhere. So I was telling you about Veer Das as well. The same thing happened with Veer. He sold out the comedy store in LA.
Yeah.
5 nights in a row, 2,500 people came.
Wow.
And after one of his shows, he went up to the green room, and Mark Maron was sitting in the green room. And Mark looks at Veer and goes,
Who are you?
"Are you?"
Right?
Who are you?
Wow.
Because it's insane. Because a comedy club, going to a comedy club wasn't a thing
Yeah.
for the longest time. And I think it became a
India.
thing, especially in India,
Yeah,
it became a thing only about 6 years ago.
Right.
And it started with this very club. You would have international comedians coming down and from the UK, and you would have 300 people inside losing their minds. And it's the same thing with people, Indians who live abroad right now, is that they knew the comedy clubs existed, but they always thought
Right.
it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, they're like, "Oh, that's a white man's
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
thing.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's
I'm not gonna-
something
I'm not
for
gonna
it.
relate
I'm
to
not gonna
anything
relate
there,
that.
yeah.
But now suddenly you have comedians in India who are becoming so huge and popular because of the internet. So when they say, "Okay, I'm in New York" or "I'm in London,"
People come
out.
You're welcome, non-Indian comedians in America.
yeah. And I was telling Carl the same thing a couple of nights ago, that I think this is the best time to be a brown entertainer.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
No,
I
brown
agree.
or a color,
Yeah.
any colored
I agree.
entertainer, and probably the worst time to be a white entertainer.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm milking.
like-
I'm milking
because
I
this.
if you
think the
look-
amount
yeah.
of diversity that comes from comedy, for example, the perspectives that
Yeah.
we have,
Yeah.
like we've often been stereotyped severely in a lot of
Exactly, for the
in
longest time.
Exactly. So like I feel like even I can't even
So
exhaust
much.
the African stereotypes. I mean, to such an extent, I had to actually go to some camping resort, right, in the bush for 30 days, right. So I could actually see more wild animals because I'd never seen
Yeah,
that many wild
yeah.
animals, and I felt like I was a bad representation
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
of Africa because everyone expects you to know stories, to have stories about lions.
Yeah, you know
And
the
the
ones that
Masai
live, the ones that
Mara.
live in your
Yeah,
back in your
exactly. And
backyard.
we don't even,
Because yes, exactly. That's our exposure to Africa. I think everybody lives just around the Serengeti.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And I think everybody knows about the great migration that happens, with the wildebeest crossing
yeah.
over and the crocodiles
East
eating them,
Africa.
because that's all
Which I
we've
have never
seen.
seen.
Yeah, I've never
In
seen
my
that
life.
either.
I've
I mean,
never
it's
seen-
East Africa. I haven't
Yeah.
even traveled to East Africa.
Yeah.
I've just been in Southern Africa.
Exactly.
But yeah.
But this is great because you get to it's quite an interesting thing when we're talking about Indian audiences abroad. Like in Zimbabwe, there's a particular gig that I do, which is predominantly an Indian audience that comes to the shows.
okay.
So when I was performing in India, I just felt like I was at home. It was such a weird feeling because it felt so familiar.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
Yeah, and it's such a great audience of comedy in Zimbabwe particularly, or if you go to Durban.
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
And that's
Are there any
something-
Are there any Indian comedians in Zimbabwe? Zimbabwean Indian comedians.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. So we do have a great friend of mine who's called Farhan.
Okay.
He's a great comic. He's working in South Africa at the
Okay.
moment. And one of the weird things as well is that even traveling to India, now I've got Indian comics in Africa
Yeah.
asking me, so how did you get? How
Yeah.
did you get these gigs? And I feel
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
weird. I thought you should know, right?
Well, let me show you the way. Follow me.
Come. Yes.
Come, I'll take you to your people. And even they can go.
Heart to the
Nube.
seas.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
sorry, you were
So
saying.
good. No, what I was saying was, this is something I've observed as well. Indian audiences across the world, even Indians or second generation immigrants over there, are always very giving.
Right.
So I remember when I did a show in Amsterdam 3 years ago, there were 90% of the audience was Dutch, and there were 2 Indians in there, and those 2 Indians
So
made
good.
up for all the
Lovely.
Dutch audiences, because Dutch people, for Dutch comedy audiences, are some of the toughest in the world because they don't. English is not their first language,
Yeah.
so you have to speak slowly. You have to break down a joke and make it much more simpler, and their responses are very mild.
Right.
So a Dutch comedian there told me that as long as they are staying silent,
That's a
Right.
good sign.
you're doing well.
Yeah.
You're doing
okay.
I'm like, that's not what I'm used
Yeah,
to back
that's-
home. And then
very
you
unnerving.
had 2 Indians in the audience who were just raising the roof with every response. So there's a lot of applause breaks, there's a lot of cheering.
Did their energy spread a little bit?
No,
Oh.
because the
Oh.
Dutch people were.
It's like, no, we're not having
being
any of it.
Dutch people, it's just that. But
It would have been weird if there were 2 black people in there. You talk
Yeah.
about Indian responses. Like black people, we don't just laugh. We laugh. We involve everyone
just
in our
like-
laughter. I'll slap
like,
you.
Slap you,
I'll
yeah.
slap the next guy. I'll take his drink. And I'll slap my knee. I'll tilt my head back. And then you still have to wait to finish off the joke.
That's great.
which is great, no, and that's why even in this particular show, I knew there were Indians in the audience only by the response. I hadn't seen them in the crowd; it was dark,
Right,
but
right.
I
Oh.
knew they were Indian. And I think,
Aw,
and I
that's
just,
comforting.
oh,
Aww,
thank you guys, thank you.
love out there.
So anyway, so what we do on the podcast is we discuss
What?
Oh,
now we're starting.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Welcome.
Oh,
fun
that's
chats
just a warm up.
over.
Warm
Now
up chat.
it gets serious. Okay, it gets serious. I have notes here.
Right.
I have a nice tablet, so
Great.
it's gonna crack your knuckles.
do this.
Snap, we warm up, good to go. Yeah. So what we do on the podcast is we discuss responses to work that you might have put up on the internet, or an opinion you may have shared, or something interesting that you've seen someone
Okay.
else share.
Right.
And then we just talk about it. It's very
fun.
cash,
Cash. That's short for casual.
casual. Yeah.
Oh, really? That was short for money. I was totally lost on that one.
Okay. So we're gonna
Cash.
so we're gonna start with you, Kaneez.
Oh, okay.
So this is your comment. Give us a background about what this comment is for, and read out the
Yeah,
comment.
so I sent this to you because I do this video on the AIB channel called Mujhe Ask Karo.
Okay.
For AIB Jagrata, which is they put content out late at night, and so whoever's on the internet late at night can consume this content, and it's very easily digestible like content.
Yeah.
And so I do this Agni aunt show called Mujhe Ask Karo, and people ask me questions, and I give them advice in my Hindi, which is not great. I don't speak
Fluent. Hindi.
fluent Hindi. So but I'm genuinely trying to give them good advice. Like my advice is not trying to be funny. I'm just trying to give them so they live their lives well.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so I do this video, and this one guy, and I get a lot of comments like this,
Yeah.
like commenting on my Hindi. And this one guy, did I read the name as well?
No, don't
Okay.
read that. It's okay. He
The-
might be. Sounds like he's a sensitive guy.
Yeah, fair. He's like, Kaneez, the only unfunny comic in AIB, and AIB let her play with her own standards of comedy. Hilarious. Moreover, how can a non-Hindi speaker speaking Hindi is funny? Somebody explain me. It's all about contacts. Talent not always required. There's just, I love it because it's so much truth in it.
Which part?
The part about having contacts, it is all about having contacts, and talent is not always required.
That's true. Look at Bollywood.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all about contacts.
I think this guy's like spot on.
Yeah, I mean, so
Thank you.
I think he's the first person to point out sort of a nepotism,
Yeah,
like
in the comedy
a
scene.
subset of
An
nepotism
expose.
in the comedy
Blown
scene.
the lid.
Yeah, because Kaneez isn't really funny. You know?
No, I'm not.
It's just-
I'm not.
It's
I've
just all these looks and the accent,
And
Yep.
accent
and brilliant acting
Yeah.
skills and the ability to remember lines.
Yeah.
and access to contacts and
And just
And
also like, do you know how many,
no-
like how much, contacts sucked?
No
to-
inhibition.
yeah,
Yeah,
to get
no
that
inhibition
far.
in front of a
Yeah,
camera.
exactly, right? Yeah, no.
I mean,
No,
it's,
Kaneez is
so-
not funny at all.
so
you know?
relaxed.
well, I mean,
She has been doing this for 10 years, but obviously,
but listen, it's,
come on.
I mean,
and by contacts,
anyone
I
can
mean,
do
obviously I
10
meant
years, right?
physical contact, right?
Yeah.
Not like,
yeah.
Oh, he.
yeah.
Oh, that
It's all
might-
about physical
It's all about
contact.
contacts.
It's all about contacts. That is.
So what? So let's just ask the question.
I
What
actually haven't read this in a while. I'm like, wait a minute.
what contacts do you have at AIB?
Yeah.
So tell us about your relationship with you and AIB. How long has it been going on?
We started being friends when we all started together in 2009.
Is this
Okay, so you're
friends
playing
on Facebook?
They're friends. They're friends. She
No.
and AIB are friends.
like we've
Oh no, like just like
We all
how
started
Facebook
together.
will merge your contacts
Oh,
with your phone and your Facebook friends.
really?
They
they do that?
Oh, they
There's
do
an
such-
app,
suggest-
and it does.
Oh,
that.
but that's if you request for
and
it.
then your career.
That-
And then your career after that happens. Just sync your
Something
contacts,
happens.
guys.
You wake up in the morning and
Suddenly your career.
WhatsApp is
Who's
blown.
Tanmay? Why is he calling me?
that's
Oh, there's a role for me. Oh, nice. So you and AIB were
No,
friends.
so like when the comedy scene started in 2009, I've been doing The Week That Wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I did an improv course in 2009, and then we started performing at Cafe Goa.
Yes.
Where all the open mics started in India,
Right.
like the Western version of stand-up comedy. Is that what it's called? It did exist before, but
Or just stand-up comedy.
or just stand-up comedy. Yeah, okay, fair. Yeah, so we all used to perform together, and I met all these guys, and we became friends since then. And
your,
so
your
as
contacts.
Sorry, hey.
Your contacts.
And then
They
I got
became
their
contacts.
contacts
You became
then.
contacts.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
as
I'm trying to
everyone
establish
grew,
this,
we
yeah.
all just kind of
Yeah.
obviously just collaborate together.
And you kept contact.
And I
Then
kept
you
in
kept
contact.
in contact
I kept
with-
in contact.
with your
I'm
contact.
really just sticking to the theme
really
here
said the
because I really
contact.
just have to. Yeah.
Is this a popular phrase in Zimbabwe as well? Contacts, okay? Do you guys get things done in showbiz because you know somebody, or is it just you gotta be?
Yeah, I mean nepotism is a big thing in our culture. So it's very
you all want
it's
to
very
talk,
easy
obviously.
to bring people up like pastors, like their sons will take over from them or like
Well, your dad was a
our
comedian.
Your dad was a
president.
comedian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was nepotism. Our president is handing over to his wife who might hand it over to their
Really?
kids, and they've put their kids in some big organizations. So contacts.
It
You
helps.
were talking about this the other day as well. Your president has been around for how long?
So Robert Mugabe has been president for 37 years.
Wow.
37
What?
years. Yeah, yes, 37.
Good old.
I'm 38.
So he was
I'm-
when you were 1 year old. He
Yeah, 1 year and then the 9 months in my mom's womb.
Lovely.
That's the only time
Good old-
I've just.
good old Bob.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
so,
just-
and he might go. I think what the plan is because they bought him a wheelchair recently. And I
Oh.
think they're basically trying to follow the model of the X-Men with Professor Xavier. 'Cause they shaved his head and everything. aerodynamics. They just wanted to make sure that he's got ease of passage. And then I believe that they're going to extract our president's brain
And then put it in.
cryogenically freeze it for
For-
another 50 years
Yeah.
until we can find a live host. And then they'll
To-
attach the brain to the live host to rule for another 100 years. But based on how things go, we might extract his DNA,
And-
just like on Jurassic Park, if we can find an amphibian, a cross like an amphibian or some kind of reptile. And so our president will rule for another 2 billion years as
Yeah.
a T-Rex.
I love that there's like a slight resentment and anger in his
Yeah,
voice.
because
It's
both
just
of
like,
us-
"Ah,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's going to be around
it's just
for
gonna
a
be
while.
around.
And at the same time, Kaneez and I are both thinking we could never say such things about our
Yeah,
prime
exactly. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this is
And
amazing.
I can't actually say things like that
Yeah,
about our
but
president.
That's great. But
So
in
what,
India,
what if somebody in Zimbabwe watches this podcast?
Which they are.
Would you get into trouble?
Oh yeah, I am going to get into trouble.
yay!
Which
So
is
it was
why-
nice knowing you,
Yeah,
Carl.
which
I
is
mean, thank
why-
you so much.
So
This
glad I
is
got
Which is why
Carl's-
I'm on tour for such a long time.
for the rest of my life.
For the rest of his life.
So, but
Oh,
do you,
sorry.
so do you have a lot of people in Zimbabwe or Africa getting offended at your comedy?
People
get
get,
into- do you
yeah.
get- do you
There's
get into trouble for
different
comedy a lot?
different groups of people get offended, like religious nuts. Religious people.
Yeah.
they get offended quite a bit when I make certain remarks. There's people from certain tribes who get offended.
Oh.
And it's weird because we've got two main tribes in Zimbabwe, which is the Shona and
And
then the Ndebele. So I'm half. I'm
Both.
half of each. So I'm like a 50-50. Do you know what I'm
You
saying?
have
I'm like,
Shia and
yeah.
Sunni, no?
Hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So sometimes I could get into trouble by making, fun. So yeah, too many people.
But you also have the like you can also be like, but I am
I am, right?
I am this, so I can joke
yeah.
about it.
You would think, right?
Yeah,
No.
I like make so many Muslim jokes. I'm
Yeah.
like, but I'm Muslim. Guys.
Yeah.
So then you will fit right into the Indian comedy scene.
I would.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
would totally. I mean, we have. So, but the thing here is people who pay money to watch a comedy show don't get offended. It's everybody else.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Is it
Don't
the
pay.
same over there?
Well, I mean, when they come into a comedy, so this is the weird thing that social media has brought to us. So in a comedy club, you've decided, you've pre-decided who's going to come into the club and what kind of mindset
Yeah.
they'll have. And so for that amount of time, 2 hours, you can say pretty much anything. And
Yeah.
you've got license to do that.
Yeah.
But now you've got social media. And now, because social media has given us a convergence of people that are super educated and people
not.
who believe that WWE is real fighting.
Yeah.
And they're all in the same place commenting equally on a
It's
particular
not real
post.
fighting.
Yeah.
No, it is.
No. Sorry. Yeah, but
it's
no.
like John Cena can totally kick Mayweather's ass, right? That's what. And so this weird set of belief systems in one place adds to a lot of people getting offended.
That's the thing. That's what happened at the roast. Like everyone in
Yeah.
that room had a great night.
Exactly.
You know?
It was everyone else. Who
It was
had a
everyone
problem
else
with
who
it.
was like-
And every instance of people getting angry at comedy is
It's the same thing.
everyone else.
Social
Yeah.
media. Yeah. Has anyone ever gotten angry at a show?
Few.
Very few, right?
Very
few.
not worth noting down
Yeah.
in the history books.
Because I think it's a stupid thing to say to your friends that I went to a comedy club, then I got offended. Like how how would you even
Yeah.
say that?
Like I
Yeah,
had one show over here at Seven on this very stage where there was I did some jokes and there was a couple and the husband got offended and he said I don't like this style of comedy and he walked out and then he called his wife. His wife said no, I'm staying. You go.
You go.
That's
His
awesome.
Clearly
That's
she's-
awesome.
she told him to leave.
Yeah.
She watched the show and yeah, that was.
That's awesome.
Again, but very few and far
Yeah.
between. And coming back to your comment, I mean, I feel your pain when you say you can't speak Hindi well
Yeah.
because it's a struggle with me as well. So unless like you grew up speaking Hindi all your life, which I actually did. So when I was when I grew up in Bombay initially,
Yeah.
for the first 13 years of my life, everybody I spoke to spoke in Hindi, so I could speak Hindi just like everyone else. Then I moved to Goa,
And no
and
one
then for the
speaks.
next 8 years, no one speaks.
Right.
Nobody spoke to me in Hindi over
Yeah.
there, so it was always English. So now, and then I came back to Bombay.
There's a little
Now it's like because I'm
transition
thinking
phase.
of what I'm trying to say in English and then
Translating it to
it to
Hindi.
Hindi, and by the time the sun has set, and it's just
No, but there's so many people in India who don't speak Hindi. Like, just
Exactly.
The whole,
We-
like the whole of South doesn't.
The
Like
whole of
majority
South.
of them don't speak
Exactly.
Hindi. So like it's even though like I'm like South African and not speaking Hindi well, but there's a lot of people who don't speak Hindi.
and it's so funny because if Kaneez and I were to have a conversation in Hindi, just Hindi right now,
You're right.
you would understand it.
Exactly.
Oh, really? Is,
Yeah.
Yeah,
is,
that's right,
that,
yeah.
is that loaded up with...
Carl, ab bahut acha lagega. आपका t-shirt अच्छा है.
Contacts?
See, that works.
See?
That actually works.
Yeah.
But do you think, Kaneez, I mean, because you've done so much of work with AIB, do you think that people are not able to place you comedically sometimes? They're like, because you don't do a lot of live shows
By myself.
by yourself as much as maybe
Other comedians.
other comedians. I was thinking who from AIB does live shows, but even they haven't done a live show in a long time. But exactly.
No, the thing is, so the thing with me is I just work with a lot of collectives.
Yeah.
Like the Week That Wasn't team.
Yeah.
Or like AIB or like the improvisers. I'm always part of groups.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just also my style of comedy. Like I'm an improviser and a sketch artist, and I like riffing off people on stage, and I like that's just my style of comedy. I don't.
And you love having contacts around you.
Yeah, exactly. I love
I'm seeing
exactly.
this general
Right?
theme coming across,
Yes.
right? It's like,
oh my God, this
I
is
can
exactly
place
it.
this, yeah.
I like contact.
Yeah.
I like contact people. No, but yeah, that's the problem. Not a problem, but yeah, I guess people then find it hard to place exactly
you because I
where
don't know.
was.
I mean, because I know you for the longest time
Yeah.
now, and I don't know how many people know this, but Kaneez is the #1 improviser in the country.
wow.
So
no,
if
I mean.
improv comedy, and I already told you this, I don't act so
No.
surprised. I'm like, it's the first time Daniel is
What?
saying
Never?
that.
Can you say that
I've
again?
never-
Here.
Because if improv comedy in India has any standing, it's because of her and the improvisers.
Yeah, and
of course,
Adam
SNG
Dow, yeah.
and Adam Dow also have a role to play in this. And I've always found improv comedy so exciting. And why don't we have more improv comedy shows?
Yeah, I know. The sad thing is, Danny, I'll be honest with you. Like, I mean, I do improv, and I have an improv troupe, and I do teach. But like in the last year, I actually have been trying to work on my solo career, just to get my name out there to help the improv scene. Because otherwise, I just merge into. There's no one face that's kind of leading improv in that sense, you know. So in that sense, this whole year, I've kind of been.
And I think you've hit some level of success. I think you have. I think now, if you do an improv show and as Kaneez and the like if you call it like Kaneez and the improvisers or Kaneez and whatever you want to call it, you know, I think people will come.
I think that's right, because I've been working on that. I realized I need to get my name and face out there. And
that's very important.
And like I was saying, Carl, right? Because you over here, you need to have some sort of online acceptance. Right.
Yeah.
Like we accept you in this role.
Right.
And then when you say, okay, guys, I'm going to do a live show, why don't you buy a ticket and come watch me?
Then they
then they show
And that
up.
wasn't happening before, because I was just kind of merged into all these collectives.
And it's also a good thing, I think, industry-wise, and people always, coming from Africa, I've had to put a face to comedy in the context of Zimbabwe, because that's the only way to grow it. You can't grow it unless
From
there's
the back,
something that people can identify and say, oh, this person's doing that, and this is why the industry needs to go in this direction. And it's more like you're balancing two roles. On the one end, you're educating the audience on what's going on, but the only way to educate them is to raise your profile in another aspect as well.
And
so
contact,
people can
constant balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I totally agree.
And contacts.
And contacts. Does it really?
But Carl, do you have some? I remember seeing some sort of a chat show format that you were doing online.
Right. So we did a late night show. Because I'm kind of banned on the local television
You're
station.
Banned?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Tell us about
literally, I've got nothing I can put onto our local television station, because it's. For example, I'll give an example. I was hosting the live version of our Oscars in Zimbabwe. Right.
What's it called?
And, it's called the National Arts Merit Awards. And so I was the host. Everybody was excited about it. I was on television for the first bit when I came out, and our local broadcaster had been talking about digitizing, and they kept saying that we're 50% complete with the process. So I come out in half tuxedo with jeans and trainers, and I said, for those of you watching at home, as you know, our broadcaster is digitizing, so my top half is in high definition and the bottom half is standard definition. What they proceeded to do for the rest of the awards ceremony was to cut me out of the live broadcast. So all you kept seeing were people just getting awards.
What?
And I wasn't,
because of that joke.
Yeah. So I kept coming, and I said a couple of other jokes about the broadcaster. But
I was like, not the whole story.
Backstage, the stage manager kept saying, "Keep going. This is great. This is dope." But then I was watching the tweets, and on the tweets, everyone was like, "Where on earth is the host? Why isn't he on television? Why isn't he doing that?" And you see, the challenges with comedy that I've had to face in Zimbabwe is that it's been one of those things that the system doesn't like to have. So I don't enjoy the same opportunities of, say, getting my own radio show, getting my own TV show, and that kind of thing.
Right.
And so it's been difficult. Even when I had a cooking show, for example, which I talk about in my comedy, the broadcaster would take my cooking show but put it on a early morning slot, like 7:30 in the morning. Rather than put it,
It was like a
in
comedic-
better-
a comedic
no,
cooking
just
show.
a cooking
Oh.
show, just a
Also
regular, yeah.
You're a chef.
Chef, yeah. So
Who doesn't love a man who can cook?
who can cook, right? And so what that means is that you've got depleted. You can't get revenues from advertising and that
Yeah.
kind, because you're in
Yeah.
the wrong.
It's not a prime
slot.
time
Yeah.
slot,
So it's been a difficult road for me to do that. So this late night show was kind of my way of hitting back by saying, listen, I can develop my own audience on YouTube. Let me just start creating content. So
Yeah.
so we created this pilot. We did it outdoors. We did it in a secret location. I recorded a couple of shows and just put some clips online. But the basic idea was now I'm traveling on tour, and the idea is to record that show in other countries rather than do it in Zimbabwe. So teach that country about Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
but in the format of a late night show. And
Wow.
so
Very
that's
cool.
pretty much where,
What is
where I'm
this
going.
show called?
It's called Late Night with Carl, Joshua Ncube.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Carl Joshua Ncube.
Yeah.
Can you do that?
Yeah,
nice and
Ncube.
simple, right?
Yeah.
I can do the clicks.
Keeping my name very short.
Like, can you do Kundawako?
Yo!
Wait, sorry.
Oh
wait,
my
wait,
God.
Wait, wait. Do it
Did you
again.
hear that? That is so...
Kundawako.
Mundawako.
Oh, hey, you're not bad.
Yeah, I can.
That was so
Do you say
nice.
Kosa?
Mundawako.
Kosa.
Kosa.
Yeah, exactly. The closer. I was like, closer. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. Carl, this one's your comment. Was the one you sent me,
Right.
and we're very keen. So take us through what your
Okay.
post was first, and
Right.
then just read the comment.
Okay, so my post, right? I was complaining about so what's happening in Zimbabwe right now is because of the high levels of unemployment, we now have a lot of these pastors that are coming out as prophets and so on. So there's a recent prophet who came out and said that he is God's second in command. And he has arrested the devil. The devil's actually been arrested in Zimbabwe.
That's great
he's in a
news.
cell. Yeah,
That's-
they locked him up and everything,
That's awesome.
and like diminished his powers.
Okay.
And so what happened
So
is
he's not
that
the president
media,
anymore?
Yeah, so the media has now started giving him interviews, right? Like he's getting interviews on every freaking
because he sounds
arrested the
ridiculous,
devil.
or
Yeah,
they believe it.
That's what I can't get.
Oh.
Like it's almost like they take like the public personalities are taking selfies with this nut.
With the
No,
man who
because
he's
arrested
like,
Satan.
No, but is it because he's like, oh, that's a funny guy who thinks he arrested Satan, or
I don't know. I mean, the selfies
don't
look
think they
more
know
like
whether
I
they're
just
being
met a
ironical.
celebrity, and this is like it's crazy. So I wrote this post about why is the Zimbabwe medium giving this devil arresting prophet airplay instead of referring him for psychiatric evaluation or giving him his meds, right?
Yeah.
And so one of my friends who's called Larry Quirirai is he runs one of the biggest blogs in Zimbabwe called 3 Men on a Boat. And he says, I don't really think there's a problem with media bringing him in. I remember once Oprah interviewing someone who believed he was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. Media bringing it out is not an issue. Deciding on someone being medically defined as having a mental health problem is something that is the preserve of a different quarter. And I'm like, come on, come on. I mean, like, how can you come out and tell me that you as a media practitioner cannot state whether or not this is a lunatic?
legit.
So let's just get into perspective.
Wow.
The Satan
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lucifer.
Lucifer.
has been arrested and
arrested.
is currently in lockup
Yeah.
in Zimbabwe.
You're right. And so the media, who, again, they have things like cameras, microphones. Why don't they go out
Wait.
and actually, like, why are they giving him an interview? Why are we having this conversation online?
Wait, Carl, has he described what the devil looks like?
He's gone into detail. Like, for example, he will talk about how they had like an all-night, like battle last night.
Pillow
and,
fight.
Exactly. Like something happened. and they were,
thee.
Yeah, and
these
they were
feathers.
like they were in the spirit. Not sure vodka. I'm not sure
Okay.
whatever. I don't know what. But they discuss these things.
I'm so like, has he locked him up physically or like?
He's
like,
locked him up physically. So he says,
okay.
guys, don't worry.
all right.
The devil's being locked up, and then God is coming on this date. He's visiting Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
He'll be talking to these
visiting
people.
Zimbabwe for his tour. He'll be touring around the world.
This guy is, but you see, the thing is,
Tickets on book my show.
in Zimbabwe, what you have to remember is that if you watch the timelines, you will realize there's a very big problem that's happened. Like, for example, one of these big politicians is a member of parliament, right?
Yeah.
Talking about a country that has high levels of unemployment and comes out because the ruling party said we're going to provide 2 million jobs. And now elections are coming. And so he comes out, he tells the public that, listen, we want to put this issue to rest.
Yeah.
We said we're going to provide 2 million jobs, but we didn't mean that they were going to be formal jobs. These are informal jobs and people just cracked laughing. If you watch the video, it's ridiculous. Like, he got bigger laughs than I've seen any comics get
More than
on a
this
comedy
guy?
stage. Oh
But
my
it's the
God.
same here, right? Politicians in India get bigger laughs than
Yeah.
comics.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but these are the same people who believe this guy.
I don't know that they no. I think
Different
Larry always plays the devil's advocate, right?
Right.
Okay.
Like,
that
literally in
way.
this case, but he's so I think he's just kind of defending the media in a.
So I
in
love it when
some
it's an
kind
all
of-
comedian
Yeah.
lineup. Then it has to be one.
Right. Yeah. So but it's actually quite it's kind of ironic that, you know, instead of us calling a spade and just saying, well, you know, now we have to be politically correct about it.
About people's, well,
Yeah, we can't really say that he's.
Are people in Zimbabwe very sensitive about religion?
Oh yeah,
it seems
oh
like
yeah,
that.
I mean, I get more threats from religious people than I do from.
So most from people who practice Christianity.
You know what?
Is
You see, the thing is, I'm a Christian. I don't look at that as Christianity. I look at it
Exactly,
as some
because
form of
which is-
fanaticism.
no,
which
but,
is
but it's
why-
Christianity. It's not like
Well, it's not Christianity to say that, you know, God is doing miracles where he's changing people's shoe sizes or their belts. I think that's a whole other religion. I mean, that's
But
like,
no, but it's
but they
called
do it
Christian.
under but they say they're Christian.
Okay.
you see, I'm specifically avoiding.
I know.
Okay,
but
so
like,
we got it. So we
yeah,
got
okay,
it.
yeah, okay, fine, fine.
Basically,
So-
Kaneez,
Yes,
what's happening?
Yeah, so that's so it's it's
Has
based
it
on
always?
Christianity.
Have they always been like such have they always had such a diehard faith, or has it been recently with the times?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's like theatrics in church. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, like there's a thing called miracle money that started happening.
'Cause I can
People getting
imagine
money
with-
in their bank accounts overnight. You know, obviously.
You're welcome, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the amount of faith is inversely proportional to
To what's happening, like,
prosperity.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's definitely developed over the last 20 years. Then that kind of fanaticism, maybe.
Yeah, well, you see it sometimes in like what you're saying. Like you see in some countries where there's, you know, abject like poverty and, you know, like loss of jobs and, you know, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, that people turn to religion. But now you've got religious leaders who are taking advantage of that
Yeah.
and preying on people and saying, like, for example, in certain churches you have to, for example, they say, you know, like if you believe that you want a house, then you need to buy a brick. You buy a brick from the church, and the brick costs 25 cents, but the brick is going for $10, $100, $1,000, or
Because it's from
$10,000
the church.
because it's from the church.
Oh, that
I
kind
know.
of con
That
games
happens
are
here
happening
as
here. So
well.
there's a
We have instead of
you
pastors,
said
we have
what
like all these gurus.
these gurus. So we have this one guy who's a yoga guru,
Right.
and once he built a certain amount of following, he actually then launched his own brand of products in various categories, and then he just said that if you want your life
to be
to
better,
be better,
buy
you need
these
to buy my
products.
products, and he's a multi-millionaire
Yeah.
now. And
Like, it's
the
huge.
products are rubbish from whatever I've heard.
Yeah.
They're very substandard, obviously. And you actually have legit brands from the FMCG category pulling their hair out, because how do you compete with something that does not exist?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because as a competitor, if I see that, you know, Colgate is doing something, and if I'm Pepsodent, I'm like, okay, I need to figure out what's working, what's not working, and that's tangible.
Yeah.
Right.
But here,
But
you're
this
just
is-
you're just people have purchased something that cannot be seen.
Yeah.
And through that purchase, now they are spending money, legit money. So
Right.
how does a business, a proper business,
Compete
deal
with
how
that,
do
or
you
even
compete
like,
with that?
yeah.
Oh yeah, like
Take away
you've
from
got
that.
this guy. I hate mentioning names, but you've got this pastor called Bushiri, for example, and look him up.
Oh.
He's on that level of entertainment. Like, he's got a video of him that shows him walking on air, right, on YouTube. And so what they do is they disable the comments on their YouTube channels,
yeah, so
right?
people can't.
Yeah, so he's walking down the stairs. So you've got like this wide shot of him walking down the stairs. And as he's coming closer, the camera zooms in on just his feet. And what you see are like shadows on either side. And he
Oh,
looks like he's walking
shit.
on air. And then he steps on the ground and the camera zooms back out. And it's
Oh,
like such a
gosh.
cheap
camera trick.
Yeah,
But-
I wouldn't even call it like a camera trick
What's his
because it's
name?
like
Bushiri.
You need to.
Do you know about this?
I
Check it
I
out.
remember reading about another pastor. I don't know if this happened in Zimbabwe,
Right.
but there was this pastor somewhere in Africa who walked into the water believing that no harm will come to him, and he was
Got
eaten by a crocodile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw the story, but I don't know which
Yeah, which part of
pastor
that?
it is.
That's
yeah, it's-
hilarious. I mean,
And the
it's not-
crocodile like ate him like completely. They couldn't recover the body. He's gone. Like that's what
He's
I
now a
remember.
crocodile.
Like I just imagine people now setting up the congregation on the banks of
Just
the
a
river.
crocodile.
Is it this one? Or is it that one? I don't know which one. Just bow to all of them.
Like what do
and
you?
say,
Because what do you
yeah.
do when you've been eaten by a crocodile? Do you bury the crocodile? Like what's
also,
the
like,
what's the standard procedure?
does it like, has their faith been wavered by this? Like, when you see that happen,
Pro-
you're like,
probably
oh, was I
not.
not believing in
Probably
the right
not.
person?
Not.
Probably not,
You know,
right?
Yeah,
I mean-
they'll probably just go follow
Another person.
See, the problem
just
with,
want
the
to
problem
follow
with
something.
the problem with faith, from what I've observed, is faith is not very good friends with logic.
Yeah.
So, as somebody who believes so strongly in something, like look at Trump, for instance. A guy like Trump, from the day he took office till now, every single day he repeatedly proves why he's incompetent to be
Yeah.
the president of America. But
But
you
it's
still,
just
his
not wavered.
hardcore followers still. What
Yeah.
about
There's
Hillary?
not- they'll-
what about
yeah,
this?
they'll
What
just
about that?
justify
So
it. They'll-
it's just that. That's what I'm saying. Faith is something that you just cannot mess with.
But I think for me, it's how I've theorized it is I think it's the reason why politically governments don't want to educate everybody. Like why the school system says you
Ooh.
start the first 7 years of your life, let's eliminate half of the people based on whether or not they succeeded or failed. The next phase of their life, we eliminate another. And if you look at the numbers that get eliminated or the people that then,
fall out,
there's
drop
a
out.
reason behind that because come election time, it's now one vote per person. Now, the people who were left in this particular system
Yeah.
are much less than the people who were left
Yeah.
out of the system. And governments have seemed to have used that a lot to say, listen, we're not going to develop the livelihood of our people because if they understand,
What's happening?
if they understand what is truly happening,
yeah, fair.
they will, if they become discerning enough, then
Where
they
it's
lo-
just- it's
po-
too many
politicians are
voices, right? It's
it's
too
the
absolutely-
same. It's the same thing here because you're also the
Makes
politics.
sense.
It's a politics of religion.
Yeah.
So it's all about, depending on which state you're in, it's all about leveraging religious sentiments. So the same political party that's in power right now, in a very Hindu-dominated state, they play beef politics where they say they've made eating of beef illegal, and there are attacks on people who eat beef.
Yeah.
But the same party with another state which is heavily Christian dominated, but then the voters there eat beef. In the
They'll-
northeast they eat beef.
Right.
So if you say I'm going to ban beef, you're not getting my vote.
Yeah.
So in the same party with the same ideology over there they say
They
you
change
can
it.
eat beef. There's
Yeah.
no problem. So back when I come from in Goa, this party is in power right now.
Right.
There is no way they can ban beef. If
Yeah.
they ban beef in Goa right now, the government will fall.
Right.
So, but at the same but at the same time, you have people who can see this happening, but the
They just
view
decide not to.
Because- so myopic.
That's the problem that I have with politics right now is that politics has become politics by numbers, but not politics by policy.
by
Yeah.
policy,
So
exactly.
like, why not?
Yes.
Why not come out and sell a policy? Why do you have to keep
Exactly.
looking at the numbers and saying what does this group of people want to hear? What do they
Yeah.
want to hear? And what you've seen, like in Zimbabwe, it's
all-
such a strange thing. Well, politicians have now started speaking in 3 languages in the same sentence because
Yeah.
they want everybody
It's all
to
this pandering.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's all
pandering to
pandering.
people.
All
And
these
I'm
people.
like, the minute you do that, you're showing me that you do not have any kind of values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you think speaking to me, you have to speak in my kind of language. That's almost like saying, oh, so the black people, oh, let's give them fried chicken, for example.
I
That
mean-
then shows me that you're playing.
There
You're
is a-
playing.
there is a balance to that. Like you do want to be able to relate to people,
Yeah.
But
but
relating,
pandering is different to
pandering is-
relating.
Oh, but
yeah,
now it's gone a step
absolutely.
ahead from pandering, right? Now
Yeah.
it's all about the populist movement. Now
Yeah.
you've got xenophobia has become a big political
Yeah.
card to
Yeah,
play.
yeah.
So now what they're doing is now they're saying not only am I pandering to you, but let's get you guys to hate each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's
And
make these exclusive
let's,
groups.
let's make this group of people feel superior to these group of people.
Right.
Let's get
And
these
then they
two
just play
fighting.
each other, play them against each
Because
other.
what's happening then is as long as the people who vote for you are fighting amongst themselves, they don't have time to ask you questions about your governance or
Yeah.
your policy, and that's exactly what's happening in this case.
What a
as well.
fun game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Like-
interesting, right? It's like the real Game
Yeah,
of
it's like a
Thrones.
real-
like,
yeah,
let's do
exactly.
this.
exactly.
What's
It's
happening
just-
with this community these days? Let's
Wow, these people, that's a
They're
fun.
stealing tricks from comedians because they know we stand in the crowd and we're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, we've got some white people in the
Yeah,
background.
any white people in the house? All right.
Indians in the front. Where are you from, sir? Okay, let me tailor my jokes just to suit you. Any Africans? I can't really see you in the back. Smile. Are you there? Okay, I can tell. Yeah. So you never know. You never
Yeah.
know.
Just read.
They're copying us.
Yeah.
We are the true politicians.
Yeah, we are the true like.
We are the
and-
ones.
Speaking of politics and comedy, let's move on to the next
Oh.
topic.
You
Not so
mentioned this
much
earlier.
politics
Ooh.
as much as controversy. So
Do you do this in? Is this a section? Is this a section in your podcast?
I think it's soon going to
Controversy.
become a regular section
Yeah.
because in the previous episode as well, we
Oh, this
discussed
is a great
something
little-
controversial in comedy. This is another controversy that's happened in another country.
Right.
So this happened in KL, where Comedy Central Asia was shooting a comedy special
Kuala Lumpur.
in Kuala Lumpur. They did this last year as well. So I was part of the lineup last year. And it's a shoot showcasing about 10 or 15 Asian comedians, and everyone does about 5 or 10 minutes. And it's a shoot that's planned to the T. So on the day before you shoot, they actually have a complete rehearsal with your material, and they tell you, okay, these are the kind of jokes
Yeah.
you cannot do, because it's a Muslim country,
Yeah.
first of all. So a lot of stuff, do's and don'ts, and you are expected to stick to your time and stick to whatever you've submitted as your material. You're not about to deviate.
So it's a live show as well.
It's a live
It's a
show,
live
yeah,
show
and
being
it's
shot
filmed
too.
in front of a live audience, multicam setup and everything.
Okay.
So they did it this year, and one of the comedians who was on, I think, day 2 of the shoot, he was closing the show and he was supposed to do 20 minutes, and instead of 20 minutes, he ended up doing 44 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
that is.
we'll come back to that reaction in a
Blasphemy.
bit.
That's terrible.
That's
That's
like
a
my
relig-
pet
that's-
peeve in
ooh.
comedy.
So he did 44
Okay, yeah,
minutes.
that's-
Then not just that, he deviated and went into the. This is what I've heard from multiple sources who were
Okay.
at the show and comedians who were at the show. So more than one person has said this. And then he went into the crowd and did crowd work. Something that I know for a fact at a live taping they don't like for you to do, because crowd work does not translate.
You should
very
do your
well.
set, right?
You
It's,
should
it's,
do
it's
your
a
set,
theatre
yeah.
show.
It's
So
a theatre
you
show. You do your set
yeah.
because crowd work does not translate well on a TV. Yes, so he went and did crowd work, and then
Just
at
put
the,
on the stage.
no, he got into the audience, not even from the stage.
Oh,
he got into the
I
audience.
thought when you said
Yeah,
crowd
yeah.
work that he was standing
Oh, no,
on
he
stage.
So then where were the
doing crowd
cameras?
work.
Just
So I don't know what happened
Okay,
with the
fine,
camera,
fine.
because obviously your framing is done, I don't know, based on
They
the
probably did
stage.
what our broadcaster did when I was on stage, which
Just
is
cut it.
just cut to commercial, right? The ZBC
Yeah.
So
school of
it's not aired
broadcasting.
yet, so probably we'll find out what will
Okay.
happen. And then
Edited.
after all of this, he allegedly asked the audience to give him a standing ovation.
all right.
And then the
Alright.
audience, not
And the audience agreed.
The audience stood up because
They're complicit,
They're like,
the audience
"Ah."
stood up,
right?
gave him, and then he tweeted a picture about how he got a standing ovation at the shoot, and how he took a leap of faith and did crowd work and it worked. And then this really pissed comedians in Malaysia off. Wow.
Okay, and what are they?
And
is
so
that
one
a
of the
comment?
so one of the comedians, Jason from KL, he put out a rant the next morning, a couple of days later, I think, and he said, "I think it's goddamn fucking disgusting for a performer of any genre of entertainment to ask the audience for a standing ovation. As in, could you please give me a standing ovation? And if that's not despicable enough, to then share the photo of this manufactured display of applause as if it was legitimately earned and not the sham it really is. A standing ovation is earned and not to be requested for. Once it is asked for, then it is not a standing ovation, but a group of people following instructions. How disgustingly shameless and manipulative can one be?"
You've left out all the swear words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my mom
Yeah.
also watches the
Be fair.
podcast.
And you know
That's
when you
automatic
type
censor.
type in capital letters, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of capital letters.
Yeah, lots
Yeah,
of capital
so you have to
letters in there.
stress.
Um,
So
Okay.
now, the reason why we're discussing this is because the comedian in question is Indian.
yeah.
And,
Not from there.
And so it's
So my thing is, okay, first of all, just to address the going over time, not okay. I'm like, I've tweeted about this a lot of times. It's not okay to go over time because, like, even by a minute, and a lot of countries, it's like, it's
Yeah,
just
you-
not done, and you get
You don't
Yeah.
get booked.
Yeah, you don't get
Yeah,
booked.
I think-
like-
and
you
I think
fatigue
just-
the audience. That's my
Yeah,
issue. When you go
I
over
think-
time, you tire out the audience for the next
I
comedian.
think for the purpose of discussion, and I know that a lot of the people are going to start commenting, I think I need to mention who it is. Because
Okay.
that everybody going, "Kaun hai?" So it's Papa CJ.
Okay.
And I did try to get in touch with him regarding, as I told him, I'm going to be discussing this on the podcast. I think this is something that needs to be spoken about because this has been happening a lot over here.
It has
as
been
well,
happening a lot.
So, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So, as I'm going to speak about it, is there anything that you would like to share? And he said, you'll give me a call today. Unfortunately, I missed that call because I was shooting for a previous episode. I did call him back. He didn't answer. So, from what I also hear from my sources, and I like how I've suddenly become from my sources and
from your contacts.
from my contacts.
Absolutely.
What I hear from my contacts is that he is going to put out a statement of his own.
Okay.
I think through a podcast or something. That's what he said. So either way, people are going to find out it's him. So I might as well just say it's him.
Yeah. Okay. And fair. We haven't heard his side of the story.
We haven't heard his side of the story. So, but we will still discuss.
Right.
The acts, because I have verified this from multiple sources and everyone.
Or just in general, we can discuss.
In general, we can just
these
discuss these things.
These things that happen.
So for people watching, like especially for a live comedy audience, and you come on to watch a comedy show, and if you see there are 3 or 4 comedians, you got to understand that every comic has a set amount of time. So there's a set list. There's a show floor in the green room which lists out the name and how much time the comedian is doing. So, and it is sacrilege to go over your time. So if you have 10 minutes, you start wrapping up by your 8th minute or your 9th minute and you get off stage. But 10 can't be 12 or 15. So in this case, it was double the time, which is like
much worse.
Which
mean,
is,
that's
I
like,
mean,
that's the amount of time you would do on a one-man show.
Exactly.
No.
And the worst part about it, and I think it's also a misconception that also the public have about comedies, because they think, so we get on stage and we pretty much just make it up as we're going along, and there's a certain amount of time that has been put into this craft. People have written material, and so this is why you can do the 8 to 10 minutes, because it's sets you have performed. And so when a comic goes over, what people don't understand, the amount of adrenaline that's going backstage is ridiculous. You imagine that speaking in public is one of the biggest fears, right, in the world.
Freaking comedy.
Yeah, now to do comedy, that has never been put on the list, because only few people in this world can handle it. Like I talk to comics, people who want to do comedy, and they'll send me a clip of comedy they've done at home, and they've said, "Oh, have a look at my," and I'm like, I don't care what you did in your bedroom.
Yeah, come
unless
do it on
you've
stage.
done it on a stage, then I know you're a comedian. So now take those fears. That comic is standing backstage, waiting to get on stage, and another comic is literally, because there's a certain amount of respect comedians have for each other.
For each other.
And one of those is time. That's the only, it's such a bad thing.
I'm sorry, Danny, but in India, this is such a big problem. It is.
Yeah,
like when I went to America, like comedians went over by 1 minute, and producers and comedy club owners were pissed off. And you get blocked. But like you're saying in South Africa, you don't get booked again.
Yeah, you don't get booked.
And India, people are very lax about that, and I don't like it, because a 1.5 hour show goes up to 2.5 hours sometimes in India.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And the audience is so fatigued. So the last act comes on, and everyone's just drained, including the comedian himself who's been waiting.
Right.
Everyone's just drained. It's just not a really fun experience, And it's one of
which is
my
why,
pet peeves.
And there's an awesome comic that I've worked with called David Kibuka. He's now on the writing team for Trevor Noah on the Daily Show.
Yeah.
And David had this great example of explaining what happens in a comedy night. He says there's a certain number of laughs available per night.
Yes.
And so when we start, everyone distributes that certain amount of laughs
And when
in
you
there.
exhaust
And
that,
when you
it's
exhaust
done.
that, people are laughing under their breath. And by the time your headliner comes out, okay, he was headlining in this case, but I mean, to take a show an additional 40 minutes when you're the last,
But the thing is, and this guy is a senior comic, okay? So he was one of the guys who helped start off the scene way back in 2010. So a lot of younger comedians respect him for that. But at the same time, you can't take that respect for granted. There have been instances in shows in India itself where he comes on and he just goes over time, a 30-minute set is a 37-minute set. There's been an instance where he came onto a show, and after the show's headliner was done, he hopped on to do a short spot, and he did about 20 or 30 minutes there. And also at a comedy showcase, there's a reason why there's a headliner format, because the headliner is the guy with the most experience, and he's the guy who's
probably get the most laughs.
Probably get the most laughs. He's the guy people have come to watch, and the psychological impact of a comedy show is that most comedy audiences always remember the last guy they saw.
Correct.
So what you've just done here is you've just hijacked his show, and then you've done jokes. And people are like starting talking about you, and you've just taken all that.
No, it's
away.
a very selfish thing to do.
And this is something that a lot of comedians in India have been murmuring about for the longest time.
But a lot of comedians are also guilty, Daniel.
and which
Not
is true.
just this
exactly.
guy. A lot of comedians are guilty
coming
of
back to
that.
that, a lot of other comedians also. So discipline is a bit of an issue, and
Yeah.
I think.
I'd like
you
to see that change.
But a couple of things that I noticed about this particular situation. So initially you'll see this from new comics. You see this
Yes.
kind of trend from new comics, and so sometimes you're like, okay, you
Yeah.
know, you must be.
Yeah.
I think once you become a lot more experienced, it's a little less forgiving.
And that's the
to
opposite
do
in
something
India.
like this,
The
right?
people at the top think, well, I'm
I can
big,
do
I'm
whatever
big.
I
I can
want,
do.
yeah. Yeah.
I can go on. People want to listen to me,
Right,
not the
right.
other smaller guys. You know, I think that's kind of. I'm very emotional about this.
yeah,
It's
fine.
really
Yeah,
like such a pet peeve. It's
Yeah,
so
no,
selfish.
it is because it's. I think at the end of the day, without just singling out one comic,
Yes.
I think every time I've been to comedy nights, we were sitting
Yeah.
backstage, and what the public don't understand, what literally happens is that when a comic is on stage, first what happens is that one of the comics in the green room will just take a glance and say, "Hey, how long has he been on? Oh, it's
Yeah.
been he's done 10 minutes." So people are like, "Okay, cool." You can already see the emotional temperature in
Yeah.
the room going. Then they'll peak again. They'll say, "Oh,
Now?
he's gone 50." Now the only thing being discussed backstage is the comic.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so what the comic doesn't, and this is just for comedians to know, is that if you're going overtime, just imagine you've got the most cynical group of people in the back
Yeah.
saying the worst kind of things, like they're murmuring, they're saying little things and whatever, and then when you come off and they won't tell you to your face, right?
No,
they'll never tell you
that
to your
just
face.
tension exists.
But once people are now trying to figure out lineups, and this is what I always said, like even when you're dealing with comedians, it's comics that get you booked or not booked.
Yes.
So a promoter will ask a question like, "Oh, should we book Carl Joshua Ncube?" Like, you know what? He goes over time.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It doesn't
It
happen
goes-
in India,
it
which
goes
I
over
think
time.
it should. Does it? Are you
So
particular
as
about
a
that? Because you
producer,
produce shows.
as
Yeah.
a producer, for me, I get. I mean, I will not book a comic, and I have actually not booked people
Okay, cool.
who are known to be indisciplined. So not just with their timing, but indisciplined in terms of how they speak to my crew, indisciplined in terms of
Yeah.
how they interact overall. So everybody wants to work with people we are comfortable working
Yeah.
with. So that's what
Fair.
happens. Then I also have international promoters who I'm friends with who'll call me and ask me if if I recommend a particular Indian comic
Right.
to
Yeah.
them, and then when it's your reputation on the line, I'm not going to take a chance.
Fair,
with
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So I'm very straight up and honest. I'm going, okay, this is a guy. He's
He's
very
good,
good. He's
but
got
he
a great
goes over
30
the-
minutes,
yeah.
but time.
Not disciplined.
But at the same time, if there are guys who are generally good, I'm like, you must book him.
Yeah.
You must get him down, and if you can. But and that's how it works for all of us.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
It's just the nature of the beast. But it's
Yeah.
one thing to go over time, but then what is this whole asking for a standing ovation? And
Yeah,
is
yeah,
this
okay.
a thing with you guys? Are people obsessed with standing ovation?
So I've seen some because now we live in this world with social media and stuff.
Yeah.
We've now started to see comics doing a lot of crowd manipulation.
Yeah.
So
Manufacturing-
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So for example,
Images.
there's a certain language that you start getting online where people will start saying stuff like, so I thank you so much to everyone who came out tonight. So you know that the show wasn't well attended.
Oh.
Or they'll say stuff like,
We do that. We do that.
"Oh, I had so much fun tonight," which means my set was actually below
hard.
average. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And or just people just taking shots of an audience, even when they were dying, and posting it onto
Yeah.
Instagram. And so you won't know.
How it actually
for sure.
went.
And so like I have it's kind of controversial for me to say, but a lot of comics, especially like back home, have a lot of great advertising of the shows that
Yeah,
they're
we have
doing.
that here.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of great advertising, but on the day of the show, there's like very little or no information about what happened. And so what the public perceives, again, remember, comedy audience is very small. The ones online, much bigger.
Yes.
So you start manipulating people
And they just think it's this big.
and they think this is what's going on. And if you look, you see like lots of comics will talk about, there's a gig and whatever it is, and then but they won't show or say what happened
Yeah.
on the day of the show.
Yeah.
You won't see any tweets from anybody. You
Yeah.
won't see any reviews.
Correct.
And so this kind of habit has started to creep up now, where I've seen it pretty much at certain gigs where the comic has written it into their set
To manipulate the
to
audience.
manipulate the audience, to give them a standing
standing
ovation.
I mean-
but it takes away from great comics. Like I've got a friend called Salvador, right? He's one of the most phenomenal like comics in Africa. And the beauty of an actual standing ovation, like when Salvador gets a standing ovation,
You
everyone
can
is up
feel
there
it.
and they're shouting Salvador, Salvador,
Yeah.
That's how big it is. And so when a comic manipulates manipulates
Yeah.
an audience to get a standing ovation. It takes away great comics who actually get standing ovations,
Deserve it.
right? And that's one of that is a pet peeve, because I saw one African comic do that.
And
It diluted everything, because we were
Yeah.
on a lineup together, and it just diluted everything
just
that we did.
diminishes
So
that
with
whole
me,
experience.
personally, it's slightly different. So if I have a bad show, I don't talk about the show after.
Yeah.
I
Gotcha.
don't like. So if you don't see a tweet from me,
Yeah,
after the
I've
show the
done-
next
yeah.
day, I'm like, I didn't like the show for whatever reason. So I did a show recently in Gurgaon, like last week. Yeah, and I was like, man, I'm not happy with this show. I didn't take a picture. I don't go. If I have a good show, I will put a picture. So like the Comedy All Stars
Yeah,
show
yeah.
that we did, it was a great show. So I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, this, because there are people who are there who know
And
if the
can
show was
verify
good or
that,
bad.
yeah.
So I can't suddenly go like I had the greatest
Great.
set ever, and something like, bro, I was there.
Yeah, it was really not.
Wasn't all that great. But there are comedians like, and they manufacture sort of
They do.
An impression, right?
and
They do manufacture impression. I don't know.
I mean,
is
we're
it-
all doing it. So let's be
Yeah,
honest. We're all in the
yeah.
business of selling our craft.
Correct.
So let's not.
can't be
he's
too
not
purist
saying that.
But-
Oh,
about
we
it.
don't do this. We
But
all sell it.
I work in marketing. One of my biggest things in comedy is my marketing.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing is, marketing always has to precede a product, an actual product.
yes.
So you sell the best aspects of
the
that
product,
product,
yeah.
but not necessarily create things that weren't there.
Hype.
Do you understand what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you for example, if you didn't have a good show, right? Then just say you performed at a gig.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
there's a language.
Yeah, but every post gig tweet cannot be, "Oof, I had the best time."
Yeah, I
and
know.
Yes,
this
yes,
was the
that's
best
not
gig
possible
I'm
ever."
that
kind
you-
of
Yeah.
guilty. I've said things like
Yeah, man,
tickets,
like, I
tickets
used
selling
to
out
do
fast.
that.
And I was like, tickets
No,
are really not
obviously.
selling out fast. Get your tickets. They're all
Yeah,
going to be
it's kind of-
almost over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
that's-
I think maybe it's because we fall into the place where we're also promoters of the gigs,
Yeah,
and
yes.
we're the acts. So
Yes.
promoters are always going to sell. They're always going
I
to sell
think-
that. You know,
Yeah.
we'll sell our reviews. We'll put our 4 stars or 5
Correct.
stars or 4.5 stars, right?
No, you're absolutely
But-
right. We're also promoters of our shows.
We are.
We don't
and,
have
and
someone.
I think a
Yeah.
healthy amount of hype is justified. Like for instance, so some of us will do this. So if a show sells out, at least if one of a show that I'm on or
Yeah.
sells out, I'll make a note that the show is sold out
Yeah.
simply because my followers will be like, if it's sold out, then it's
Must be a
probably
good show.
good. Like, maybe
Yeah.
so the next time, because there are certain venues that I perform at very frequently.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I can create some sort of hype, which is legit,
Yeah.
tickets are sold out, it is sold out.
Yeah, yeah.
So then maybe the next time somebody who may have thought twice about or may have been on the fence about
Will
coming
be
to the
like,
show, might
it's
have
a
to go,
sold out
"Look,
show."
it's sold out the last time, maybe it's good, let's do this.
That's a
But
fair
if
way
the
of
show
doing
doesn't
it.
sell out, then I can't put that sold out
Yeah.
show tweet because somebody can click on the ticket link and still see that
Almost
there are
sold
tickets available.
out.
So
Yeah, like
80% sold.
Yeah, so I've-
90%.
And there
I've
are some
put-
comics who
yeah.
honestly say 5 tickets left. So
Right,
because
right.
there are 5 tickets left. So, so
That's
but
me.
but this is the thing, and I think we have to draw a distinction between
Yeah.
the promotion aspect, right, and then the craft.
yes.
Yeah.
So these are two different
You
things.
can't mix the two and
so,
try
like,
to manipulate
Yeah,
an
so
outcome.
I
Yeah.
find like a lot in Zimbabwe online, people who, again, who haven't even attended any show where I've performed, right,
Yeah.
have very strong opinions about me. So they'll say, well, Carl is great because of his marketing. And I'm like, well, if it was marketing, I wouldn't get booked.
Yeah.
You see, there's an indicator that's there. You wouldn't get booked because you only get booked once.
Yeah.
It
You
would
won't
never
come
happen again.
back again.
That's the first thing. And so because I have to, for example, I'm in India, so I'll have my own tour visuals that will say I'm doing an Indian tour.
Yeah.
Right? But it is a tour because I've been on a world tour.
Yeah.
But that's separate to the individual gigs that I'm doing that are part of this
Right.
this tour. But I still have to go on the stage. I still have to do that 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I still have to make people laugh.
yeah.
And you can't fake that. And I shouldn't fake
Thank
it.
you. So it's not about marketing and contacts.
Yeah. And context.
Like you still
right.
need talent at
You
the end
still
of the
need
day.
a
Like
product.
Talent
there
at
has
the
to be
end
a
of the
product
day.
that
Yeah.
you're selling and that it's
At the end
working.
of the day, like Coca-Cola, people will say Coca-Cola has put lots of money behind marketing.
Yeah.
But let's remember that they also have a quality
Yeah,
product.
exactly. We all
Yeah.
like
They
the
have a
taste of
quality
Coke.
product. They've taken their water through I don't know how many
Yeah.
processes of distillation
Yeah.
and whatever they've done, but
Yeah.
they've actually
Got
focused on a product.
Correct.
And I think the worst trap a comedian can fall into is the marketing trap, where all he focuses on how to sell the shows, making
Yeah.
posters that look really good, and but not focus on the writing, not focus on things like sticking to time,
Yeah.
not focusing on things that don't wear the audience out, respecting your peers who are also on the lineup.
Yeah.
So I think if there are young comedians out there who are listening and probably, and today we get this more than ever, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Here's what you don't do. Like,
Yeah.
do not ever go over time. Don't do things you're not supposed to. Don't try to manufacture a perception of your shows going really
Yeah.
well. Because guys, it's 2017. Everyone has a cell phone with the camera.
Yeah.
Everyone has eyes. Everyone has a mouth. There are comedians back. Everyone can see you. Today is possibly the worst time ever to try and sell hype
Without being
with
caught up.
for an
Yeah.
art form that's about the truth.
Yeah.
And do you know what the worst part about this is? As on a personal level for the comic.
Yeah.
And so if you've been manipulating what you want people to think you're doing, and it's not true, it still comes down to what happens on the stage.
Exactly.
And what
Fair.
people forget is they say comedy is a talentocracy because it's only based on your talent.
Correct.
Yeah, but like I've seen, you see on nights where the person on the bill who's the headliner doesn't even match up to the opening guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the person who's
Yeah.
done a 5-minute
Correct.
open spot has killed
Killed
it more
it.
than,
More than
or
anyone
even
else, yeah.
a member of the audience who's heckled a
Yeah.
comic
It's funny,
has
yeah.
become
Funnier
the
than the
biggest
comic.
star
Yeah.
on the night. So
Yeah.
the people have to remember that there's a distinct difference between the comic has to be true and honest to themselves.
Yeah.
Did I really get a standing ovation
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
or not?
I guess that I mean,
So we'll
at the
wait
end of the
to
day,
pause
he has to
probably,
live with
yeah.
that.
I mean, because one of the other consequences with something like this is you're just putting yourself into exile.
Yeah.
You're going to have
well, within the comedy community.
within the comedy
yeah.
community, because people are
Although the nice thing about this particular situation, comedy, unlike anything else, right? He can bounce back from this.
he can
I
but
mean,
I think he
yeah.
needs. I mean, possibly a lot of us maybe. I mean, I don't know. Who knows what we're all guilty of? I mean,
Yeah,
I may be doing
exactly.
something that's
Right.
probably and so on and so forth. But I think it's only when you get that wake up call when you realize that okay, guys, because this has been happening for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not.
It's not a
Oh, we're surprised. Like a lot of comics in India, when they heard about it, it's like, why are you shocked? I mean, we knew this was happening. So I think maybe.
Another way, Danny, like the truth is like, people are going to do their shit.
Yeah.
And maybe we just need to focus on our own craft.
Which
I mean,
is-
at the end, like, of course, we have to like all
Yeah.
build a community and
Yeah.
like rules and like guidelines, but also like, like people are, there's going to be those people who do this, and well, hopefully they'll what's the word?
Yeah, but what it's also a case where the people doing it are supposedly the flag bearers
I know,
or the guys.
but
I'm
maybe
just
if we
I mean, the stage is an unbelievable bit of karma. It's so weird because
That's
like
I also kind of
you
believe that.
when you're a comic and you're an asshole to other comics, it's somehow there's a way it comes
It
and
comes
bites
back
you.
to you,
That's what I'm saying.
Bites you in the ass. Like if you steal jokes, for example, there's a way that
it
comes
does,
back and bites
Yeah.
you.
With time, they kind of fall to the side.
It does.
It
and,
does.
and
They
so at
fall
the end
out
of the day,
system.
I think it's a great thing as an individual comic. Yes, we do get angry. Like in this case,
Yeah.
we do get angry
Jason's
about
very
stuff
angry.
stuff
Jason,
like this.
I feel your pain.
But
Yeah.
but at the same time, I sometimes I just like to sit back and watch and I
Watch the
like to
world
sit back and
burn.
just watch and say, listen, just let it, just let it
Yeah,
have.
I'm
like
just gonna go work on my stuff,
yeah,
kill
just
it, hopefully.
Yeah.
because that's the only place a comic wins is on stage.
Yeah.
You've got no other place on earth you can win. It's not interviews. It's none of this
Nothing,
stuff.
it's on
If you
stage.
can't be funny in that amount of time you've been given, at the end of the day, that whole 40-minute stint might just end up as 10 minutes. Anyway,
Yeah.
I mean,
on the,
edit,
Yeah, we're
obviously.
just
I mean,
hopefully-
it'll be edited down to 10 minutes and we'll
I'll
never
trust
know it
karma on
happened.
this. I do. Like
putting your faith in karma.
I do. I put my faith in karma.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
They might cut out the standing ovation.
Yeah. Yeah,
It might
probably.
just be edited
Cut to
out.
commercials.
Might be on credits. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. I mean, I could feel this.
No, there's a lot of
Yeah,
anger. Of course, we get angry when
yeah.
someone's
Yeah,
messing
it's
with
just-
our art form, and of course, like we're all
It's sort of
very
like a purge.
territorial.
I think it's sort of like a purge that things happen, not just in comedy in our life for a
Yeah.
while where it's happening. I know it's happening, but sometimes it just gets to a point where somebody has to go, okay, enough.
Yeah.
Stop it. I think maybe this is one of those things because everybody wants a better scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So this maybe let this be a moment. Maybe I don't know, or maybe not.
Maybe.
Who the fuck knows?
And then
Maybe then
yeah.
6 months later we'll hear another story. But
And then that's fine as long as
that's
we're
fine,
working on our
yeah, as
jokes
long
and
as
we're
I-
getting
as
better.
long as I get an episode out of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're gonna see. I think we're gonna see a lot of this. We're gonna see a lot of this kind of stuff being exposed.
Yeah.
You're gonna see joke theft being exposed
Yeah,
a lot more.
joke theft.
You're gonna
Yeah.
see internet jokes being exposed a lot more.
And it
You're
has to
gonna see-
happen. All in all, I think just do what you're supposed to do. Just get on stage, tell jokes, get off on time, and
Just
I
be
think
a
that's
ni-
it.
just be a nice
guy.
person.
Be a nice
in-
person.
Be a nice
Be the
person in
good
the
guy.
green room.
Yeah.
Just
Be the good guy.
Just stick to your time.
Yeah.
Just be funny.
And again,
It'd be funny. I think.
And
It'll be
again, just
funny,
to be
right?
clear, this is not about running someone down. Or
Oh,
something
no.
like
No.
that. This is
No.
very
Talking about the
clearly
culture.
a discussion about culture that we would like to see.
Yeah.
And of course, we couldn't get his version of the story.
And he
hopefully-
has a
I'm
side.
sure he'll put his side out as well and let everybody figure out whatever they want to do with it.
Yes.
But
Or it could have just been a joke.
yeah, it could have all
Yeah,
just been
one
called
big-
one big joke. But at the end
No,
of
it's
the
only
day,
fair
I
to
think
hear from him as well.
yeah, it's fair to hear from him. So let him put out his
I'll
version
be
of the story.
watching the I'll be watching.
You will
the,
wait. No, you
I'm
have.
gonna
Carl,
wait for
Carl,
this
you will
thing.
have to
Wait in
wait.
India.
You can't book a flight till he puts.
Exactly. I'm
his
not gonna do.
story.
I just have to wait for this
Let's
response.
see,
yeah,
like,
so
uh,
let's see what he has to say.
I
and
would.
then,
Yeah.
you know, but I think
Wow. This is a great chat.
In
My coffee
fact,
went from
yeah,
hot
it's
coffee to
from-
cold,
to
to cold
cold
coffee.
coffee.
and
Yeah.
you haven't finished your coffee, which makes
Yeah,
it a
yeah.
very
What?
interesting chat.
Oh.
And on that note, and
Nice
those couple of
coffee.
sips, that brings us to the
Yeah.
end of this episode. I hope you
Just
guys
thank you.
had fun.
Had a,
on this.
Danny,
It
I
was-
just like to give you a standing ovation.
Standing.
Standing
Yeah.
ovation,
For
uh,
this
from-
Slow,
podcast.
slow
from
clap,
standing
guys.
ovation.
You didn't have to
Thank
ask.
you.
Slow clap.
Thank you.
Slow
Slow
been
clap.
the-
You
You
may-
you have been the best.
Yeah, you may.
This
Best
was
podcast
and
host.
please put that on Instagram.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
just you didn't have to ask for your standing ovation.
Yeah,
We
you
gave
didn't,
it
have to ask for that one.
Thank
It
you so much,
wasn't.
guys.
pleasure.
I'm really
It wasn't
honored.
written on the tablet.
It
It
wasn't
wasn't
written, guys.
written
No,
just
it
so you
wasn't.
know it.
Yeah,
It's
no.
not say give me a standing ovation. It's fine. If
But,
you
but at the end of the day, guys, sitcoms have always had applause signs.
yes, that's true because public should.
So
That
I
is-
don't know.
That's a forced.
Maybe we're being hypocrites here.
But sitcom
No, I'm
writing
kidding.
is different. Right? Just-
Well,
In the next
Yeah.
episode,
the
of
next episode. Yeah, the next episode. Sitcom writing. I'm going to
just trying
have
to
the
keep
writer
this
of
long,
Friends and How I
playing
Met Your
devil's
Mother.
advocate. You know how we are Zimbabwe with the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're close.
So if you want to listen to an audio version of this podcast, you can download it from the link in the description. You can put it on your phone, in your car. I personally recommend that an audio version of any podcast works better than video.
Yeah.
Carl, thank you so much for being on this
Yeah,
podcast.
it's so nice to meet you, Carl.
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Cool.
I keep us posted with what happens with Satan and
With
and
Satan,
his
yeah,
character.
we're going to try and
We'd love-
see that
yeah.
we keep him, you know, as
Yeah,
long
just-
as possible.
Just make sure he doesn't meet Donald Trump. That's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
I'm saying.
exactly.
Kaneez, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Daniel.
I hope you had a nice time.
I did.
And I really, really hope that we get to see you perform live
Yeah.
improv soon. I would definitely buy a ticket. And I'm
Thank
just telling
you.
you guys as well, Kaneez is one of the best improvisers in the country. If you see a show being announced for live improv comedy, please buy a ticket. It's
that's so
just as fun as stand-up. It's nothing I enjoy more than watching an improv show. So catch both of these
And you'll
comedians.
also be on my game show soon.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be on Kaneez's game show soon.
Yeah.
Kaneez hosts a comedy game show, which is quite hilarious. Check it out. We'll send you.
It's so random.
It's very random and very funny.
So random.
So yeah, come check that out as well. All of us are on Twitter and Facebook where we lie about how good our shows were. So Carl,
Nice.
what's your Twitter handle?
Oh,
Carl?
Carl Joshua Ncube.
Yeah,
Carl
yeah.
Joshua
You don't
Ncube.
have to. When you
Ncube.
have to
Just,
that,
the
just go
end.
Ncube, yeah. Obviously, the information will be flashing on your screen,
Yeah.
Kaneez as well. And thank you so much for tuning in. This is me, Daniel Fernandes, signing off. Take care and goodbye.
Bye.
Putting your finger inside it is a much better option.